pounds, the Juicer! All right, the Juicer back again on NWA Worldwide Wrestling.
From the reason he is my partner, the reason he's my partner is because he had this partner named Santo. Everybody knows who Santo is, Hijo del Santo. Well, he carried him just like this. He carried him on his back for like 2 years, just like his dad carried the father of Santo on his back. And you know, we're tired of carrying people.
Bueno, vamos a traducir.
How did you find out that Art passed away?
Oh, God. Dean, I said, what are you talking about? And she goes, Art. And that ain't sounds important now. Art Barr, and I mean, just get chills today. And I said, no, he's not dead. I couldn't believe it. I said, call a hospital right now and tell me where he's at. He's dead. No, he's not. And I couldn't accept it. It took me about a good hour to accept it. I just couldn't believe it.
Art Barr's wrestling career was marked by success, controversy, and tragedy. His story reads less like a traditional rise to fame and more like a three-act play. One defined by rapid ascent, public downfall, and an unlikely reinvention that ended far too soon. Emerging as a second-generation talent in the Pacific Northwest, Barr quickly gained attention through a mix of natural charisma, a bit of edge, and a gimmick ripped straight from Hollywood. However, that same volatility would soon follow him outside the ring, and his career was derailed by a criminal past that forced him out of the very territory he was born into, seemingly ending his future in professional wrestling altogether. Yet Barr's story did not end there, eventually breaking onto national television and later reinventing himself in Mexico, where he found both redemption and superstardom. But just as his legacy was beginning to solidify, just as it seemed his story had taken its final, triumphant turn, it was cut short, ending abruptly, mysteriously, and far too soon. What remains is one of wrestling's most complicated legacies, one built on talent, shadowed by controversy, and frozen in time before its final chapter could ever truly be written. Born on October 8, 1966, in Portland, Oregon, Art Barr was, in many ways, destined for the wrestling business. As the son of Sandy Barr, a respected wrestler and promoter in the Pacific Northwest, he was raised in and around the industry, learning its rhythms long before ever stepping into the ring himself. The Barr name carried weight in the region, not only through Sandy's influence, but through the talent he helped develop, including Art's brother Jesse Barr, better known as Jimmy Jack Funk, and future stars like Matt Bourne. For Art, wrestling was not just a career path, it was part of his identity. That foundation quickly translated into real ability. As an amateur wrestler, Barr showed clear promise, winning 4 district championships and 2 state titles, establishing himself as a legitimate athlete before ever becoming a performer. Although his time at Oregon State University was cut short due to personal responsibilities, his commitment to wrestling never wavered. If anything, it accelerated his transition into the professional world. Barr made his professional debut in April 1987 for Pacific Northwest Wrestling. While his family name may have opened the door, it did not take long for him to prove he belonged. Early on, Barr displayed a natural charisma and confidence that set him apart. But his true breakthrough came through opportunity. One shaped not just by lineage, but by timing and influence within the territory. His true breakthrough came through a character change, one suggested by a legend. His close friend, Rowdy Roddy Piper, saw something in Barr and encouraged him to adopt a more defined persona to stand out. Taking that advice, Barr transformed himself into a character inspired by the 1988 film Beetlejuice. With a painted face, flour-dusted hair, and an exaggerated, almost cartoonish energy, he became one of the most recognizable and popular figures in the Pacific Northwest. The gimmick resonated with audiences, showcasing not just his athletic ability, but his charisma and willingness to fully commit to a role. For the first time, Art Barr wasn't just another second-generation wrestler. He was a star in his own right. But just as quickly as that momentum built, it came to a halt. Outside the ring, a real-life incident would soon bring his time in Oregon to an abrupt and controversial end. On July 16, 1989, after an evening of matches, Barr's life took a turn that would permanently alter the course of his career and another person's life. In a secluded stairwell behind an arena in Pendleton, Oregon, he had a sexual encounter with a 19-year-old woman, an encounter that would later result in assault charges being filed against him. As the case began to unfold, the situation quickly moved beyond the ring, casting a shadow over both Barr's rising popularity and the promotion that continued to feature him. Despite the growing controversy, Pacific Northwest Wrestling chose not to immediately distance itself. Promoter Don Owen and his company continued to use Barr in the Beetlejuice role, a decision that reflected both uncertainty and business interests. As Don's son, Barry Owen, would later explain, "We wanted to stick by him and not abandon him. He hadn't been found guilty yet, and we didn't want to turn our back on him." Others saw it differently. Columnist Margie Boole, writing for The Oregonian, criticized the decision, arguing that the promotion's priorities were clear, protecting a profitable performer rather than addressing the seriousness of the allegations. The contrast was difficult to ignore. A performer marketed to children, still playing that role, while facing accusations of a violent crime. A year later, just as the case was set to go to trial, Barr accepted a plea deal, pleading guilty to first-degree sexual abuse. During the investigation, he admitted that the encounter had not been consensual. The court ultimately sentenced him to a $1,000 fine, payment of the victim's hospital bills, 2 years of probation, and 180 hours of community service, much of it involving youth organizations. The outcome brought the case to a legal close, but the damage to Barr's reputation and career in the Pacific Northwest was irreversible. As the case became public, Barr's popularity in the Pacific Northwest began to erode. The once beloved character, so closely tied to children and family-friendly entertainment, now carried a far different perception. But ultimately, his departure from the territory came for a different and somewhat unexpected reason. In the aftermath of the case, the state of Oregon refused to renew Barr's wrestling license, not directly because of the assault conviction, but due to a prior offense he had failed to disclose. Years earlier, as a teenager, Barr had been convicted of cocaine possession, a detail omitted from his licensing application. That omission proved decisive. With his license denied, Barr was effectively barred from wrestling in his home state, closing the chapter on his Pacific Northwest run entirely. Under most circumstances, this would have marked the end of a career. Instead, it became a turning point. In a surprising move, World Championship Wrestling brought Barr in shortly after he was banned, offering him a second chance on a much larger stage. The company saw value in the character that had made him popular and sought to recreate it for a national audience. However, with WCW now operating on a broader platform, the original Beetlejuice-inspired gimmick posed legal risks. To avoid potential copyright issues, the character was rebranded as the Juicer, a slightly altered version of the persona that had first put Barr on the map. Any hope of a fresh start in WCW quickly began to unravel. As Barr appeared on a national stage, the controversy that followed him did not stay behind in Oregon. Columnist Margie Boole continued to write critically about his presence in wrestling, now turning her attention to WCW, for presenting him in a character still closely associated with children. Her columns gained traction, and soon, copies were being anonymously faxed to newspapers in cities where WCW events were scheduled. What had once been a local scandal had now become a traveling one. Behind the scenes, his standing within the company was no better. The promotion's booker, Ole Anderson, reportedly told him bluntly that he would never make it, citing his size and insisting he would never draw money. It was a criticism Barr had heard throughout his career, a reflection of an industry that favored larger-than-life physiques over smaller, technically skilled performers. Not long after, the company made its decision. WCW cut its losses and terminated his contract, bringing his brief and turbulent run to an end. At just 24 years old, Art Barr had been banned from his home territory, rejected on a national stage, and left without a clear path forward in the industry he had grown up in. But it was far from the end of his story, because it was only after this point, after the controversy, the rejection, and the failures, that Art Barr would finally find the place where he could become a star. And that place was Mexico. Conan, already a major star in Mexico's EMLL promotion, had crossed paths with Barr during a brief stint in WCW in late 1990. Seeing something in him that others had overlooked, Conan extended an offer, one that would take Barr out of the American wrestling system that had rejected him and into an entirely different world. In Mexico, Art Barr would not just continue his career, he would become someone new. Donning a mask and taking on the name American Love Machine, Barr embraced the tradition and spectacle of lucha libre. Removed from the baggage that had followed him in the United States, he was able to reinvent himself completely. The smaller, faster, more character-driven style played directly to his strengths, and for the first time in years, the reaction was not hostile, it was electric. About a year later, he faced one of the most significant matches of his career, a mask versus mask showdown against Blue Panther. The stakes and the crowd were enormous. Over 17,000 fans packed Arena Mexico in Mexico City, while another 8,000 watched on big screens in the parking lot. It ended when American Love Machine performed a piledriver on Blue Panther, a move considered illegal in Mexican wrestling, resulting in a loss that forced Barr to unmask. In lucha libre, losing a mask is never merely a defeat. It is a transformation, a moment of reinvention, and for Barr, it symbolized that he had truly arrived as a performer in Mexico. Shortly after, Barr left for the newly formed promotion AAA. It was here that Barr would form a partnership that would define his legacy, teaming with Eddie Guerrero to create the Pair of Terror, a tag team that combined charisma, in-ring skill, and a willingness to push boundaries. In AAA, the partnership between Art Barr and Eddie Guerrero skyrocketed to legendary status. Together, they became arguably the most hated tag team in lucha libre history. The team's success only grew as they joined forces with other Americans like Black Cat, Madonna's boyfriend, and Jake Roberts to form a faction known as Los Gringos Locos, the Crazy Americans. The group dominated storylines and broke attendance records across Mexico, solidifying Barr's reputation as one of the most electrifying performers in the world. Critical acclaim followed as well. Barr was on a guaranteed contract, earning more than he ever had in his career. Wrestling peers noticed his brilliance. Eddie Guerrero later reflected, "I learned so much from Art. He could make the fans laugh, he could make them cry, and he could make them pissed off." Yet behind the fame and accolades, Barr struggled. Mexico was far from home, far from his son Dexter and his wife in Oregon. He missed his mother terribly and battled a deep homesickness. To cope with the pressure and distance, he turned to alcohol and prescription drugs, seeking an escape from a reality that was otherwise overwhelming. Even as his personal life spiraled, his in-ring career reached new heights. Barr toured Japan with New Japan Pro Wrestling, scheduled to work a program with Jushin Thunder Liger. Around the same time, he was also set to participate in AAA's collaboration with WCW for the promotion's first ever pay-per-view, in what ended up being the biggest match of his career. On November 6, 1994, AAA held When Worlds Collide, one of the most critically acclaimed pay-per-views in wrestling history. While Conan faced Pero Aguayo in a cage match on the main event, The sold-out crowd at the LA Sports Arena had come primarily to see Barr and Guerrero face El Hijo del Santo and Octagon in a high-stakes hair versus mask match, a testament to just how far Art Barr had come, from a banned performer in Oregon to one of the most electrifying wrestlers in the world. The match itself was nothing short of spectacular, still regarded by many as one of the greatest in wrestling history, but unbeknownst to fans, it would also be the last time Art Barr ever had a high-profile match. On November 23, 1994, while home for Thanksgiving, Art Barr passed away in his sleep. A toxicology report later revealed a mixture of alcohol and drugs in his system. He was only 28 years old. Yet even in death, the circumstances surrounding Barr remained unclear. In the days following his passing, another possibility emerged, one that added an even more unsettling layer to the story. Just one night earlier, during a AAA house show in Tijuana, Barr had been struck in the head by a chair thrown from the crowd as he walked back to the locker room. The impact, reportedly landing behind his ear, was severe enough to potentially dislodge vertebrae in his neck. Whether his death was the result of substance use, trauma from the incident, or a combination of both, has never been definitively resolved. What is certain, however, is that the life of one of wrestling's most complex and compelling figures came to an abrupt and tragic end, leaving behind questions that, like his legacy, still linger. His sudden death stunned the wrestling world, cutting short a career that had reached unprecedented heights in Mexico, and leaving a legacy that would forever be tinged with both brilliance and heartbreak. In a shoot interview years later, a distraught Eddie Guerrero recalled receiving the news while in Japan. His ex-wife had called to tell him that Art had died, apparently of an overdose. "I couldn't believe it," Guerrero said. He reflected on the deep personal impact Barr had on him and how the loss continued to resonate years later. "I knew Art didn't want to die," Guerrero said. At the time of his death, Art Barr was at the very top of his craft. A top draw in Mexico and widely regarded as the best heel in wrestling. His in-ring skill, tireless work ethic, and uncanny ability to captivate audiences had made him an icon, a performer whose matches could provoke laughter, tears, or fury, often all in the same night. His influence extended far beyond his own career. Eddie Guerrero, his tag team partner and close friend, continued to honor Barr by performing the frog splash as his finishing move, a living tribute to the Love Machine. Barr's impact endures not because his life was perfect, but because it was real, a mixture of raw talent, flawed humanity, and unforgettable performances. He remains a reminder that wrestling greatness can come with chaos, that brilliance can coexist with controversy, and that some stories, like that of the Juicer or the Love Machine, are impossible to forget.